At a noisy auction, every animal found eager buyers. But then one dog was dragged onto the stage, a massive, weary shepherd mix. His ribs showed through. His fur, his head hung low, and his eyes carried nothing but defeat. Silence fell. No one raised a hand. Whispers rippled. Useless, dangerous, worthless. The auctioneer's voice grew, desperate, lowering the price again and again, but still no takers. Just when it seemed the dog would be cast aside forever, a young man stood. "I'll take him," he said firmly. Gasps filled the air. People called him foolish. What happened next left everyone shocked. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The auction tent buzzed with chatter, excitement filling the air as people eyed the animals on display. Horses were paraded proudly. Sleek dogs barked and wagged their tails, each waiting for a hand to rise and claim them. But in the corner, away from the bright lights and eager buyers, lay one dog who no one noticed. He was large but painfully thin, his coat dull as eyes, heavy with defeat. Unlike the others, he didn't bark or wag his tail. Instead, he kept his head low, paws folded beneath him as though he already knew his fate. Whispers floated through the crowd. "Too old," someone said. "Too weak," another muttered. The auctioneer's voice grew louder, but no one lifted a hand. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The dog barely moved, his sides rising and falling slowly with each breath. Children tugged at their parents, eager for the lively puppies. Nearby, but no one spared a glance for the quiet figure on the ground. To everyone there, he was a mistake, a burden, a life not worth saving. The gavel hovered in the auctioneer's hand, ready to close his chapter forever. The auctioneer's voice echoed across the tent. "Any bids? Do I hear 50, 40, 30? His words grew sharper with every second of silence. The crowd shifted, uncomfortably, their eyes sliding away from the lonely dog. Just as the gavel began to drop, a single hand rose from the back. A murmur swept through the room. Heads turned to see a young man, no older than his mid-20s, standing tall and confident. His clothes were simple, his face earnest, and yet his eyes held something powerful. Conviction. "I'll take him," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the noise. The auctioneer blinked, surprised. "Are you sure, sir? This one isn't exactly popular." A few people chuckled, shaking their heads. "Waste of money," someone whispered, but the young man didn't flinch. He stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the trembling dog in the corner. "Yes, I'm sure," he replied, placing the payment on the table. "He deserves a chance." Gasps rippled through the crowd. No one could understand why anyone would choose the dog that everyone else had rejected. As the leash was handed over, the dog lifted his head slightly, his tired eyes meeting the man's for the first time. For the first time that day, hope flickered. The walk from the auction grounds to the young man's truck was slow and hesitant. The dog's paws dragged against the dirt, his body trembling as though expecting another rejection. The young man spoke softly, his hand steady on the leash. "It's okay, boy," he murmured. "You're safe now." The words were simple, but they carried a warmth the dog hadn't felt in a long time. When they arrived home, the man opened the door wide, letting the dog step inside first. The house was modest, but filled with warmth, sunlight streaming through the windows, the faint smell of fresh bread. From the kitchen, the dog hesitated at the threshold, ears twitching, nose testing the unfamiliar air. Finally, with a cautious step, he entered. The young man placed a bowl of water on the floor and waited. At first, the dog turned his head, too used to disappointment, but then thirst overcame fear, and he leaped slowly at the bowl. It was the first small sign of trust. Later, as night fell, the dog curled into a corner, his body tense. The man, he flinched at sudden sounds, avoided touch, and ate only when he was sure no one was watching. The young man gave him space, but never stopped offering kindness, placing food gently, speaking softly, and sitting nearby without forcing closeness. Little by little, change began to stir. One morning, the man awoke to find the dog standing at the foot of his bed, tail twitching faintly. It wasn't a wag, but it was the first sign of trust. The man smiled, extending his hand. This time, the dog didn't pull away. Days turned into weeks, and the once broken creature began to transform. His coat grew shinier, his ribs less visible. His eyes, once clouded with defeat, started to glow with life again. The first time, he barked loud, strong, and proud. The man laughed with joy as though hearing music. Soon, the dog followed him everywhere, through the fields, into town, and even on quiet evening walks. Neighbors noticed a change, too. That can't be the same dog from the auction, one whispered in awe. But it was, and the difference was undeniable. The bond between them deepened with every passing day. What had begun as pity was now something stronger: loyalty, friendship, and love. It was late one evening when the test came. The young man was returning from town, his loyal companion trotting faithfully beside him. The road was quiet, lit only by the pale glow of the moon. Suddenly, from the shadows, a figure emerged, an intruder, desperate and reckless, blocking their path. The stranger's voice was harsh. "Hand over your wallet," he demanded, stepping closer. The young man froze, his heart racing, but before he could respond, the dog surged forward. His deep growl rumbled like thunder, his body tense and protective. The intruder hesitated, startled by the sudden force of loyalty. Before him, the shepherd bared his teeth, his stance leaving no doubt. No one would touch his master. He lunged, snapping the air inches from the stranger's hand. Panic swept across the man's face. Within seconds, he turned and fled into the darkness, his footsteps fading fast. Breathing heavily, the young man dropped to his knees, wrapping his arms around the dog's neck. "You saved me," he whispered, voice trembling with gratitude. The shepherd licked his face, tail wagging proudly as though to say, "I will always protect you." From that night on, no one doubted the bond between them. The dog, once rejected, was now a guardian, his loyalty tested and proven in the most unforgettable way. News of the encounter spread quickly through the small town. Neighbors who once mocked the young man's choice now looked at the German shepherd with awe. "That's the same dog from the auction," people whispered. They couldn't believe that the weak, unwanted animal had become such a strong and loyal protector. One afternoon, the young man took his companion back to the auction grounds, not to buy, but to show. As they walked through the familiar aisles, murmurs filled the air. People turned, recognizing the dog who had once lain in the corner, rejected and forgotten. But now his coat gleamed, his stance was proud, and his eyes burned with life. The auctioneer himself paused, gavel in hand, and shook his head in amazement. "I never thought I'd see the day," he admitted. The crowd stood in silence as the young man knelt beside his dog, stroking his fur with pride. "This is what happens when you give someone a chance," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. The shepherd wagged his tail, pressing against his side as if echoing the words. In that moment, the dog was no longer a symbol of rejection. He was living proof of hope, loyalty, and second chances. And everyone watching felt moved to their core. If you were moved by this incredible story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay with us for more heartwarming and unbelievable stories.